going to explain what exactly is the build automation, how we can go for the test cases automation, listing out all the building artifacts, and demonstrating the integration with Git and GitHub. And also we're going to talk about Jenkins build, what exactly is Jenkins build automation, how we are going to set up the email notifications. We wanted to send the email notifications as a result of the Jenkins builds, the overall outline of the Jenkins pipeline concept, what are the benefits we get with the Jenkins pipeline, and ultimately the configuration of Jenkins with Maven. So how Maven build tool can be integrated within Jenkins. Now let's begin with the build automation. Before even talking about what is a Jenkins pipeline or a freestyle job or a build automation, we should be having a basic understanding that what is a build process all about. Now the source code build process is very simple. It's something which is just a basic work of compiling, performing a compilation over here of the application source code, because you cannot deploy the application source code in the actual environment, in the production environment. You need to compile your source code so that you will be able to get the binaries, the executables, and that's the one which you really wanted to deploy into an actual environment. So these build process is very important from the development perspective also, because they really wanted to build out the source code and wanted to understand that how the resources, how these source codes will be compiled, and rather than deploying the application source code, they are looking for the deployment of these executables or whatever the end result we have got over here. So that's something which we really wanted to deploy, we wanted to host over here. Now, the build process is very simple. It's something which is a very common task being done by the developers. I mean, the developers are part of this process. Earlier, the developers were doing this process manually, but later on, when the build automations or these tools comes in the picture, they started using it automatically with the help of build tool. So build tool is very important in the overall build process, because if you're doing the build manually, then you have the couple of commands. You have the development IDE tool, which is available. Using that also you can build it. But if you really wanted to automate it, then build tools is something which is very important. Now, usually in these small projects, the developer perform all the projects, all the activities, right from the build to the deployments, right? But again, in the larger projects, you cannot afford the developers doing the build process and these kind of manual stuffs. So they will be looking forward for an automation solutions where they can do this stuff automatically, so that at least these like these, because these are the frequent tasks, these are like the repetitive works which the developer should not be doing. So we wanted to automate it so that they should not face any kind of issues and problems as such over here in this one. So that's something which we are really trying to target over here in this case. Also, these build scripts you can keep just like an application source code. You can keep these build scripts into the code repository so that you can get an end result. You can have the particular output going on over here. So that's something which we really wanted to use and we wanted to get along over here. So build process is definitely one of the best process which we have, and it's something using which we will be able to have an executables there. Now if you do it manually, then it's just a build there, but if you do it automatically, then we call it as an build automation, which can be triggered automatically and without even any kind of developer interference. Now this is what a typical build process looks like. So you have a Java source code. For example, there is a Java source code which is available there. Now, as part of the compilation process, if you're going to compile this Java source code, because computer does not know the high level language, so it only needs to understand the binary language 0 and 1s. So you have to basically convert this high level language into the executables, into the binary or the machine code game, and that's where the whole compilation process comes in. So the Java compiler will convert it into the Java bytecode, and again the bytecode compiler will basically convert it into the form of bytes and into the machine code and provide it to the particular processor or the machine over here. So that's why these processes are very important, because these are like something which is really helping us to understand that how these processes, how these build processes can really help you to get along and get the desired output. So You will be doing the modifications to the source code, to the program files. Then with the help of compiler, every programming language will have its own compiler. So with the help of compiler, you're going to compile the source code. Once you compile with the source code, you will be able to get a particular program, a compiled program over here. And that's something which you can deploy and you can host up over here in this one, so that you will be able to get a desired output. So that's what we are trying to achieve. We are trying to get along over here. Now, what is the build automation? Now, definitely, we don't want to consider that the build should be triggered manually. The developers were already doing this stuff manually earlier, but now we wanted to get along with the new automation trend where we wanted to see like how automatically we can do the automations. Now, build process is just converting the compiling of the source code and generating the artifacts. Now, if you come to the build automation, it's just an automated way of doing it without any developer interference. That's all what it's provided by the build automation. And build automation is also one of the critical steps as part of the CI/CD pipeline, which we have talked about in the previous lesson. So from the CI/CD pipeline perspective also, build automation is very important. So if you don't do any kind of build automation over there and you don't do the automation in the backend, it's going to be very difficult for you to manage to handle those kind of stuff. So that's why build automation is very important to get along with that activity to get the configurations over here in this case. So that's a way that how we can perform the build automation. Also, it's giving us or ensuring a fast feedback to us, which means the moment the developers are able to fix the bugs or issues, they will be able to know like what is the kind of quality they are preparing over here, so they can get an immediate feedback that if the compilation is working on or if the source code is compiling properly over here or not. So that's what we are trying to do. We are trying to enforce over here in this case. Also, it gives us a standardization process. I mean, if multiple developers are there or multiple professionals are there, so they may keep on doing the builds multiple times, and they may do the mails frequently again and again. So it may be a kind, there may be a scope of the failure or some issues there or some errors. Now this scope can be reduced by having a standardization, that if you go for a build tool, so that can bring in some standardization so that we cannot foresee or we don't face any kind of issues or troubles as such over here in this one. So that's the main thing which we are really looking forward over here, so that the moment we are done with these things, we should not be facing any kind of issues and any kind of troubles as such over here in this case. So that's the main thing which we wanted to consider. So these are the different build tools which is available. Maven is there for Java, and is there for the Java. Gradle is for Java, Rake is for the particular Ruby, and Ant is there for the .NET technology. So depending to the programming language, there are multiple build tools which is available there. So you just have to get along with these build tools and get started with the implementation. So in some cases, maybe there are more than one build tools for one programming language. So that's possibility or also something which is available here. Now, what is the test automation? Now, test automation is also a very interesting fact. I mean, in a typical world, in a normal SDLC cycle, you would be taking care of the build automation first. You're doing the build process first, and then you're running some test cases. Now, we know like after the compilation of the process, we are doing the deployment, and then we are validating the source code with the help of test cases. Now, earlier the manual testing was there and people were doing that stuff, but we are also moving towards that because again, there were the same problems, issues comes there also, that if any human is taking up a wrong decision or the test is not validated properly, again, we are facing a lot of issues and trouble. Also, we have a limitation that a person can only work 8 hours a day. So if beyond that you feel like you want to run some test cases, it's not possible. So in order to enhance that functionality, in order to get past that one, so we wanted to have an automation, the test automations available over here. Now, software testing is very important aspect of any particular software, so we cannot live with that part. But rather than doing this particular approach, or rather than doing this manual testing, we are looking forward at how we can get rid of that manual efforts and we can go for the automations. So that's why a lot of organizations are promoting their existing QA professionals or the testers towards the automation test cases or the automation there, so that they can get uh, particular familiar with this technology and then they can start contributing. So software automation is something which is very important, and a lot of people are actually including this into their typical CI/CD pipelines, because without the CI/CD pipelines, it would be very difficult over here on this particular stuff here, right? So that's the main focus. That's the main thing which we have got over here in this one, that how this can be a real problematic over here to understand that how the things can be done. So test automation plays a very important role in the continuous integration process, because when it comes to the continuous integration process, we have the build and the test cases automation over here. So both the things we have to automate, and we have to do it with the help of the CI/CD pipelines over here in this one. So first the build will be happening, the compilation will happen, and then the test cases will be executed, so that we will be able to know like if our test cases is working fine as expected, or there is still any kind of scope of improvement which we have over here in this one. So that's something which we are really trying to go around, and we wanted to enforce over here in this case. Now this is how the continuous integration flow looks like here. Now as we talk about over here, you basically, the developer basically start with the checks in over here to the source code repository. So they will be trying to perform the changes over here to see like how the commits can be done. Now after that, what it's trying to do is like it's trying to look upon like how like if there is new functionality or new source code which is being built out, so it will immediately go around and see like what is the build. So the build execution will be happening there. Now if it's an automation, that's fine. If it's manual, then definitely you have to trigger the build over here. Now in the case of, as part of the build process, you will be compiling up the source code, you will be generating the executables out of your source code, your application source code over here. Then depending on that, you can of course give the feedback, like if any issues are there between the let's say like if the build itself failed, so you can send the feedback immediately to the developer. After the build, you will be running the automation test cases, so if any kind of issues are there in the test cases, then also you're going to send the feedback back to the developers here. So the feedback is something which is constant, and it's very important, because every time we are trying to perform some build process or some test cases execution, so at that time what will happen, that we will be able to send up the feedback. And this feedback is very important, because using this only we will be able to know like how our source code is going on, what is the quality. So that quality confirmation and validation is only with the help of this feedback. And this is the biggest benefit which you're looking about, because in earlier case, in the manual approach, you need to have someone going on and testing it, and performing the build process or performing the testing and validation. Then only you will be able to have the specific feedback there. But that's not the same case over here. So over here we are getting an instant feedback. The moment you're done with the development activity, you will be able to have a feedback right from the build and the test cases execution over here. So that's the biggest benefit which we are going to get over here with the help of continuous integration workflow here. So both build automation and the test case automation is very important concept over here. Now, what is the process of building artifacts? Like, it's very important, because as part of the development process, development teams, you will be listening up, or you will be hearing about this particular process very frequently. Now, before even talking about building artifacts, let's say like what is the artifact as such. So when you do the compilation process, when you do the build process, so after that, converting or having the executables for your application source code is what we call it as an artifacts. So artifacts is nothing but the end result which you are going to get after the compilation of the source code. So of course, when we talk about the build artifact, so it's the same thing. Like, but yes, it's generated as part of the build automation. So if we relate all these things, so the moment you do the build automation, you trigger the builds. So after that, you will be able to have artifact generated, and that's something we call it as a build artifacts over here in this case. So that's the main thing. That's the main stuff which we really wanted to consider. We wanted to implement over here. So different programming languages have different build artifacts. For example, Java, we have the particular jar files, war files, ER files. These are the standard artifacts, with build artifacts, which is available there. If we talk about the .NET, so the exe file and the ELL files are the ones which is available. In case of Android, you have the APK files which is available there. So every programming files or programming language is having certain artifacts to be built out, so that you will be able to have that artifacts, and you can then later on deploy it, or you can store it over there. Now, before the build tools, the developers used to perform these activities manually, and they used to, generate these artifacts with the help of IDE tools, with the Eclipse, NetBeans, or these kind of tools they used to use to perform the build automation and generate the build artifacts. But now, with the inclusion of the build tools, you don't have to interact in that way, and automatically in a non-interactive mode, without any interaction, you can now generate the artifacts over here. So that's a kind of an advantage which we are going to getting over here when it comes to the uh, build tools and build artifacts is just an end result, a byproduct once the build automation is performed over here in this case. So this is again a kind of a diagram which is representing like how the build artifacts can be generated. So we have to right away, because in the source code management tool you will be having the application source code. So whatever the source code we have over here, so that's something which we will be storing up into the version control system over here, and from there you will be proceeding further with the continuous delivery process, the continuous integration process. So you are trying to perform the build automations, like you are trying to perform the build automations, running the test cases, generating the build artifacts, and then uploading to the artifactory so that you can preserve or you can have this artifact secure there. So if you really wanted to deploy later on to a production environment or to some another environment, so you need to have or you need to upload all these artifacts in a secure location. Now let's talk about the Git integration with Jenkins. Very important tool, because we know like Git is a kind of version control system which is available there. But as far as the integration is concerned, it's something which is very important to be integrated in Jenkins. Whatever the automations you follow, like continuous integration, continuous delivery, or continuous deployment, interaction with the Git is a basic stuff. I mean, if you really wanted to check out the source code, so you need to check out the source code and get the particular source code checked out, right? So that's a basic stuff. That's a basic task which you need to do. So having a interaction with the Git is very important stuff over here. So if you will be able to have a proper interaction with the Git, so the very first step which comes up as a part of the CI process is to check out the source code. Then only, of course, if you have the source code available, then only you can go with the build automation or the test automation, right? So having a source code available or checked out is something is a prerequisite over here. Then only you will be able to go ahead with the build automations and the test cases here. So that's the reason why the very first plugin which gets integrated in a CI/CD pipeline is about the Git over here in this case. Now Git is again a kind of version control system, like a distributed version control system, using which what we can do is like we can handle or we can work out with the different Git repositories, and it's something which is going to work as a distributed architecture. We call it as a distributed architecture because we can still work with Git in the absence of the internet. So in the absence of internet, we can still work on this distributed architecture and this Git distributed mechanism over here. So it also provides a lot of features. I mean, like something where you will be having the branching, merging, all these options are also available there, using which we will be able to handle or we will be able to go with the Git over here. So Git is a very popular tool, a very popular version control tool, which is having a default interaction and the default integration with the Jenkins here. So that's the main purpose of using the Git, that how exactly Git can be used and can be implemented over here. Also, Git is something which uses a very secure mechanism of storing the commits, and whatever the details is available there, the commits information is available. All that things will be able to see over here in this case. Now, as far as the Git installation is concerned, you can pretty much do the installation of Git using the apt install command. So apt install command is something using which we will be able to have a Git software install onto your platform, onto your server. Now the whole focus of having the Git installation done is so that we will be able to get the Git command lines installed. So when you wanted to run the Jenkins build, so it will be invoking the Git command. So you need to really have the Git executables deployed on the server. Then only you will be able to run or you will be able to execute the Git commands over there onto the server. So that's why it's very important to have the Git command line deployed over here in this one. So that's a prerequisite and important thing. So Git command line installation is a prerequisite for having a Git integration within the Jenkins so that you can check out the source code and you can get the desired source code or the desired application over here in this one. So that's a part of the setup here. Now, once the installation of Git is done, so you can pretty much run the git hyphen version command to see like if you have really got the correct version of Git available or not. So if you don't have the Git version available, so you can validate or you can get the desired Git activity or the Git software deployed or installed over here in this one again. So most of the platforms nowadays are actually coming up with Git installed. So in most of the operating system, you may not have to go always and do the installation of the Git software. But again, if you're working off with any kind of older versions of Linux, then you have to definitely go for the installation of the Git software in that case because it will not work without that. Now, how we can do the configurations of Git with Jenkins? That's a very good point because ultimately the very first way when the Git and the Jenkins is being interacted over here. So Jenkins is something which is going to interact or connect to the version control system so that it can fetch the latest source code and check out on the server, on the Jenkins server, and from there the build automation will be started. So that's a kind of initial process which is being implemented over here. Now, if you really wanted to interact or configure Git into your Jenkins job, so all you need to do is like you need to go to manage Jenkins, like from your dashboard of the Jenkins over there. And in that case, you have to click on the new item. So in the new item, you will be selecting up the Freestyle Jenkins job. Like if you really wanted to create that kind of a Jenkins job over here. So in the job configurations, we have something where we can manage the configurations. We can put up the Git related settings over here. So yes, open the Jenkins GUI and click on new item and have a freestyle job created. So just like this, you will be having a screen. So select the particular, provide the Jenkins job name over here and then select the freestyle job. So that say yes, this is what we wanted to see. We wanted to get with the new Jenkins job creation over here. And once it's done, so you will be seeing like in the Jenkins configuration, so whatever the Jenkins job you have created, you will be able to see a source code management section or the tab which is available. And in this only you will be providing the repository name, that whatever the repository URL you have got, so you will be able to get it. So since we have the repository available in a GitHub, so I can give the GitHub link over here that yes, from this you wanted to hit upon or you wanted to fetch the repository and you want to get it on there. Now this repository details is very important from this because from this one only, from this repo only, you are trying to fetch or you're going to get the complete repository application source code here. So your source code will be available in this repo and internally from Jenkins, you're going to check out this source code so that then you can start doing the build automation and you can trigger the builds over here. So that's something which we are trying to do. We are trying to achieve over here. Now, what is the focus? What is the benefit of having a GitHub plugin here? Now, technically, Git plugin can actually handle all the version control systems about the Git here. That's something which is pretty much able to handle. But again, some of the facts, some of the features may not be available there. For example, if you wanted to have a GitHub webhook or you wanted to use that, so in that case, Git alone plugin is not sufficient for you. So in that case, you have to do is like you have to go for the GitHub plugin in that case. And what you need to get over here is that you need to install the GitHub plugin. The moment you install the GitHub plugin, what will happen that you will be able to have a particular GitHub integration done or performed over here, and you will be able to get the desired output as such. So in the Jenkins GUI, you can pretty much create a new job, or you can modify the existing job also of a particular Jenkins job so that you can see that yes, this is the Jenkins job which we really wanted to modify. You can create a new job or you can use the existing one also. It's just it's something which you can use. You can have it accordingly over here in this one. So that's just a part of the stuff here. right? So all you need to do is like you need to go to the manage Jenkins. So in the manage Jenkins, you will be having the administrator settings. So you can select, you can go ahead with this one so that you will be able to see like how exactly you can use, you can prefer to go for this particular settings altogether. So manage Jenkins is the one using which you will be able to perform the settings, and you can do the changes to the master configurations of a Jenkins instance over here. So that's something which we are trying to perform. Now in there, we wanted to access the plugin manager. So Jenkins supports the plugin manager for if you really wanted to have any kind of addition of the plugin or deletion, uninstallation of a plugin or upgrade of a plugin. All those options are pretty much available in the plugin manager. So in the manage Jenkins, you will be having an option called manage plugin, in which you will be managing all the plugin related settings and the configurations. Like if you really have got some particular plugins and you wanted to make update to them, or you wanted to uninstall them, so for that part, we are trying to have the plugins implemented here. So when it comes to the plugin manager here, so plugin manager, again, in order to do the changes to this one, you should be having the admin access. If you have the admin access, then only you can perform the changes to the plugin manager over here in this one. So that's why it's very important that if you have the access, you should be carefully managing all the particular plugins over here in this particular case, in this GitHub over here in this. Now, when we are going for this manage plugin or a plugin manager over here, so you can go to the available tab. If it's already installed, you can verify it by going to the install tab. But if you really wanted to implement, or you wanted to have the new plugin installed, so you can go to the available tab and you can go that whatever plugin you feel like you want to install, you can go, or you can have that one here. For example, if you want to go for the GitHub, just search for the GitHub and then just download it, and the plugin will be installed. Now some plugins may actually require a restart also, so you may have to do a restart of your Jenkins also, just to make that plugin activated. So that's a part of the setup. That's a way that how some plugins is configured. In some plugins, maybe that's not required, and you will see like right away in the Jenkins plugin manager itself that if the bounce is required or not. So that details you will be able to get over there. So if it's not required, that's fine. That's totally okay. But if it's required, you will be able to see in the screen itself that yes, it's required, and you need to go ahead, or you need to proceed with that part. Now, next one is what is a Maven introduction over here? Like, what is all about Maven over here in this one? So that's what we are trying to talk about over here. Now, Maven is a kind of build tool which is available there. It's a Java-based build tool which is available, using which we will be able to handle, or we will be able to take care of the build automation. So it's a build automation tool which is available. Now, every programming language, it's having its own build tools available, and the whole focus of having these particular build tools is to perform the build automation, or having a build going on there in total background there. So you don't want to go for any kind of activity in an interactive mode, and you want to do it totally in a background. So that's why, keeping in mind, we are looking forward for the build tools there. So Maven is also kind of a build tool, and it's very powerful for the especially the Java-based application. And in a lot of cases, the Maven is like a default tool available for the Java-based application. So you have to use that as a default tool, and you can use and you can have that particular tool implementation. And what is the focus of these build tools? The main focus of these build tools is to compile the source code and get the executables generated over here as part of this. No one deploys the application source code because you really don't want to expose your source code. So you wanted to compile the source code and get an artifact generated, which eventually you can deploy to a specific environment. So that's something which we are trying to perform, we are trying to execute over here. Right now, again, it depends, like if you really wanted to do this manually or automatically, so depending on that you can go. But yes, if you really wanted to deploy it, like if you want to go with that part, so we have the Jenkins kind of a tool which is available, using which we will be able to go ahead and we can automate this stuff. So automatically, if you want to trigger the builds, so that the moment you're done with the commits, automatically it should be generated. So that's where we can go for the build automation tools like Maven over here. So Maven build automation tool can definitely help you on that particular aspect. Now, how we can do the setup within Jenkins? I mean, like this is one of the build tool which is available there. So the setup in which we wanted to configure the Maven, the same way we can do it for the other build tools also. It's kind of common in that particular case here. Now, in order to configure the Jenkins and the Maven over here, so what happens is like in this case, you have to really see like how the configurations can be done. Now, we have a global tool configuration which is available into our Jenkins, using which we wanted to see like how the configurations and setups can be done. Now, as far as the configuration is concerned, it's something using which we can handle multiple build tools configurations here. Like if you want to manage Maven, Gradle, and or any other MS build or any other tool, you will be able to handle with the help of the Jenkins over here, right? So when it comes to the Maven configuration, so what we can do is like we can go to the Jenkins dashboard. You can just go to the Jenkins GUI there, and from there you can go to the manage Jenkins. From the manage Jenkins, you can just try to provide like what global tool configurations you wanted to do. So you can go to the Jenkins, you can go to the manage Jenkins, and from there you can access the global tool configuration web page. Now this is a single page from where you can manage multiple tools. I mean, like if you wanted to really configure the tools, the build tools over here, so this is the screen for you. Now, once you are onto the global tool configuration, you can add any tool. Like if you want to add the JDK, you want to add Maven, so you just have to select the option that what kind of version you want to have. If it's a JDK, you can provide the JDK details like, okay, this so and so version of JDK you really wanted to install, you want to deploy. If it's like Maven, so you can select that, okay, 3.5, 3.6, or that kind of version of Maven we wanted to deploy here. So these kind of configurations you are doing as part of the global tool configurations. And the moment you're doing it, so what is the real purpose of doing this particular stuff here? Because I don't really wanted to connect to the server and physically wanted to install some executables or some particular build tools over here. So what I really wanted to do is like I wanted to get along and wanted to perform the setup for this Maven over here. So that's what we are trying to do. We are trying to really perform over here, that I wanted to have some Maven build scripts integrated within my Jenkins and get it triggered over here. So you will be accessing the global tool configurations, and in that case you will be setting up the Maven. Now you can of course have the path if you have an Maven install predefined in some environment, so you can have that environment configured. Otherwise, you can select that yes, you wanted to download it from the internet. So if it's installed in some remote location or some different folder structure, you can give that exact path, the Maven home path. But if you don't want to refer it from a file system, so all you can do is like you can say like yes, we will be installing it directly from the internet so that we will be able to download it dynamically. So that's the main purpose that why people are looking forward for the global tool configuration, because they really wanted to have performed or have this particular done automatically without any kind of human interruption, or you don't have to even log into the server for doing that stuff. Right now, once the build tool is configured, then we can just try to run it off. We can use it up into the particular build tool, and we can have it integrated on the Jenkins. So that's the reason why we wanted to implement over here. So that's the real purpose here. Now let's talk about the Jenkins build over here. So what exactly is Jenkins build all about in this one? So when it comes to the Jenkins here, so what happens is that Jenkins build is something which is automatically perform the builds. It's something which is defining the build automation. So whatever you are going to configure in the Jenkins, according to that, you will be able to have the build automation done. Now, why? Because build automation is something which is done with the help of build scripts. You can invoke these build scripts and from your local laptop, from your local desktop also. But if you really don't want to do that kind of build automation, so what you can do is like you can go for the Jenkins and trigger these builds remotely, and without any kind of manual efforts, you can do the build automation. Also, you can combine with the help of like using this one, you can combine some test cases execution. So build automation and test cases automation. So both the things, both the processes you can automate over here with the help of Jenkins here. So Jenkins build is just a process where whatever the things you have coded up, whether it's a build automation or it's a test case automation, according to that it will be performing that particular stuff here. Even you can configure the deploys also, the deployment process also into the Jenkins, and you can go ahead with that. Now, Jenkins is designed in a Java programming language, but it's not limited to Java. In fact, it can be handled up, like it can, take care of a lot of programming languages like C Sharp, Shell, JavaScripting, XML, .NET, Android, iOS. A lot of programming languages can actually be handled up with the help of the particular Jenkins tool over here in this one. So that's a way like how the different tools are being handled up and being utilized over here in this case. So Jenkins build is something which is taking care of like how these different tools can be built out, can be used over here. So you can have a standard processes like continuous integration built out with the build automation and the test cases automation over here. Now, when we are trying to interact with the Git or any kind of version control system in Jenkins, of course, the way how we wanted to fetch the changes is very important. Now, Jenkins job provides a variety of options just to check out or just to bring the source code onto the Jenkins locally so that at least the build process can be triggered, can be initialized. Now we have a very good feature called source code polling in the Jenkins. Now as part of this setting, what happens is that this is purely there from the particular build perspective. Yes, we can do the build automation in the Jenkins, but having that triggered automatically is also important. So if you just log into the Jenkins and keep on running the builds manually, so it will not fulfill your purpose. So you have to really go around and see like how this automatic build can be triggered so that you don't have to put any kind of manual efforts as such here. So that's the reason why we have particular processes like source control polling, which is available there. Now, what it does is like it does a continuous polling to the version control system. Like in Jenkins, we have one of the particular trigger which is available with the poll SM option. So what we do is like with that part, we are pretty much doing the polling to the specific version control system for the changes. For example, if any kind of changes are done to the Git repository. So automatically the build will be triggered, and once the build is triggered, the build automation, the test cases, automations will be available there, and that's what we will be able to get over here. Now, the thing is that if we set, for example, I'm setting up the polling for 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 10 minutes. So every 5 minutes or 10 minutes, it's going to connect to the version control system and fetch for that values. If it's going to find out new commits in the repository, it will trigger the build. Otherwise, it will not trigger the build at all over here. So that's a real purpose of using the poll SM option. It's a poll SM option which we see as a technical terminology into the Jenkins for performing this kind of implementation. Now, again, there are some couple of drawbacks with this one. The primary drawback is that you're doing continuous polling. If there are multiple projects available into your Jenkins, you are continuously doing the polling to different specific repositories here. Now, that's definitely going to put a huge impact or put a huge load onto your Jenkins and at the particular version control system also. So we should not be following these kind of process because these definitely cause a great trouble for you because you're going to unnecessarily do a polling to the version control system and it contributes a lot of efforts both for the version control system and the Jenkins over here. So that's why we should, it's not that much optimized option which we have when it comes to the Jenkins here. Now this is how it happens. So the freestyle job or the Jenkins pipeline or whatever the kind of project is have. So this is a standard option. So what means like you will be able to connect, like you will be able to reach out. You can perform a polling. So which means like using this one, you will be able to understand that Jenkins is doing the polling to the version control system. And in case of new commits, it will trigger the build. Otherwise, it will stay there itself. So that's a kind of advantage here. So it's not happening like unnecessarily some builds are running. Only in the case of new commits and genuine commits, the build will be triggered. Otherwise, the build will not be triggered as such here. So that's the main benefit which we get with the polling activity here. So in order to configure this setting, all you need to do is like you need to access your Jenkins job. If you have an existing Jenkins job, then fine. If you wanted to create a new Jenkins job, you can click on new item and have a new Jenkins job created. For an existing job, all you need to do is like you can just go for the build trigger in the Jenkins job, and there you will be able to see a poll SM option. So poll SM option is the official name for the polling activity, which we typically do between the Jenkins and the version control system. So the Jenkins will be performing the polling activity to the version control system so that the moment it finds out a new commits there available in the version control system, it would trigger the build automatically. So this is a very precise trigger which is available, and again we will not be getting unlimited builds over here, and it will be giving you the particular desired output over here, and an automated trigger will be triggered completely over here. So this is the window here. Now this schedule is something which we are providing from the cron pattern over here. So you have to provide the cron pattern. For example, if you give 5 times stars, so a static symbol, so you will be able to run it onto every minute, every 1 minute. If you click on this help button over here in the blue icon, you will be able to get the sample cron patterns, using which you can understand that what kind of patterns you have to use if you really wanted to get proceeded or you wanted to proceed further on this particular part here. So keeping in mind that thing, we will be able to understand fully like how this source control polling can be done and can be a beneficial thing for you guys over here in this one. So that's the way that how you will be able to get the end result or the end product over here. Now, what exactly is a freestyle? Because we have such a huge number of Jenkins job there, and freestyle is just one of the type of Jenkins job which is available over here in this one. So freestyle is a kind of job, Jenkins job which is available. Now, the name is pretty clear that it's not something which is very static to one type of Jenkins job. It's very common. I mean, it's a very generic way of creating any Jenkins job over here. So we are not saying that freestyle is only there for a certain programming language or for a certain automation. It's a very generic process which is available altogether. And what we do is like we get along and say like, yes, this is the one which we wanted to automate for a particular couple of automations. You want to do a Java automation, you want to do a .NET automation, you want to do a particular uh, any kind of Android automation. So for all the cases, we will be able to handle or we will be able to take care of the freestyle job over here. So we freestyle project is something which we will be able to take up completely in case of a Jenkins here, right? So when it comes to the freestyle, so definitely it gives us a comfort that how these things can be used, how this kind of Jenkins job can be utilized for perform a variety of applications automation there. Now, when it comes to the freestyle, so definitely we will be able to have a variety of automation performed there. You wanted to run a shell script, you want to run a Maven build, you want to run a Gradle build, and build. It's a kind of a generic solution. So you don't have to get stuck over here that yes, it's only there for the Java-based project or a particular .NET based projects. It's a very generic process which we get all along over here. So those projects, those teams who really wanted to go for a very generic implementation, they can go for the for the implementation of the freestyle type of Jenkins job here. Also, freestyle for a very long period of time was being used as a ultimate tool for performing the build automations and the test automations. So people were using that one for performing the particular builds for the test cases and even for the deploys. So they were pretty much using it for that functionality, and they kind of were depending on these Jenkins job there. And at that moment of time, it was the only a way out for performing a build automation or test cases automations there, and we were not having any other kind of a Jenkins job available. So that's where we were using it, and we were trying to provide, and we were using this particular project as such over here. So that's where we were using this pipeline, the CI/CD pipeline was being used for to be developed into the freestyle here. And so far also, like people are still using it. It's not like it's something which is depreciated. People are still using this freestyle type of Jenkins job because it's a very common way of automating some builds, some deploy, some test cases in case of Jenkins. So that's the way which we wanted to use. We wanted to get along over here in case of Jenkins. Now, in order to create a freestyle project, all you need to do is like you need to just go to the Jenkins UI. When you go to when you log into the Jenkins UI, you will be having an option to create the new Jenkins job. So you can click on the new item. The moment you click on the new item, so there you will be having the option that what kind of Jenkins job you wanted to really create over here, whether it's a freestyle or it's a particular GitHub or it's a particular like if it's a particular Jenkins pipeline project, so you have to define that which or what kind of tool or what kind of Jenkins job you wanted to create over here in this one. So that's what we are trying to do. We are trying to perform over here in this case, right? When it comes to that implementation, when we are providing that freestyle project name over here, so ultimately we need to save that name that yes, we are creating so and so freestyle type of Jenkins job. You have to provide a basic name that yes, this is the Jenkins job name over here in this one. And once you are done with that, you just have to save that Jenkins job here, and it will be completely saved there. So again, once you save this Jenkins job, later on you can anytime come in and you can perform the changes to the configuration. But at the same time also, you can perform the changes and you can do the modifications there. So the configuration part is something which is stored in the Jenkins itself. So at any moment of time, you feel like you want to change it, you want to modify it, you can perform that particular stuff over here. So that's the way that how the freestyle projects are being managed over here in this one. Now let's talk about what are the different type of build triggers which is pretty much available over here, because build triggers is very important feature of Jenkins. Now having a manual build trigger is not something which we advise, because again there is a manual efforts which is involved over here. So we are not definitely looking forward from that approach that we can go for the manual builds. We are looking forward for a build automation so that these builds can be triggered automatically without any human interference or without any kind of efforts, so that in a background, in a non-interactive mode, we will be able to have the builds triggered in a proper manner, in a proper mechanism here. So that's what we are trying to do. We are trying to implement over here altogether. So let's talk about what are different type of build triggers which is available. Now the whole focus of these build triggers is trigger the build automatically. I mean, we don't have to really depend on these builds particular in a manual approach. We have a build now option in Jenkins which we can trigger. But if you really feel like I want to trigger it automatically, even if a person is not available uh, in a particular random way in the night, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, or 2 o'clock, you really wanted to trigger some builds. So that's where the schedule builds or the build triggers comes in. So the build triggers definitely help us to schedule the builds so that at any moment of time during the day, during the night, we can schedule the builds and we can get the build automation done here. So that's the main focus of the build triggers in the Jenkins. The different Jenkins build triggers which is supported over here, the one which is very popular, the very first one is the build after other projects are built out. Now this is a very old mechanism which is available, using which we used to define the upstream and downstream job configurations. Now in this one, what it was happening is that we were configuring like what is the upstream jobs, what is the downstream projects. So we were saying that yes, I don't want to manually trigger this build, but it's having a dependency on another Jenkins job. So in this one, you have to configure a source Jenkins job depending on which you wanted to run the current Jenkins job. So when the source Jenkins job is successful, you will see like your current Jenkins job gets triggered automatically. So it was all dependent on another Jenkins job. The whole response was coming up in that particular case according to that activity. So we are not talking about like how these tools, how these builds are really going to happen over here in this case completely. Now we also have a build periodically option, something which is used to schedule the builds automatically. I mean, depending on a schedule, you can trigger your Jenkins build, Jenkins process. Now the only drawback with this option is that unnecessarily you will see like multiple builds being triggered. So you don't really want it to get along with that part. You don't want to run the builds again and again frequently. So in that case, we can ignore this option. But if you feel like using this option, you want to schedule the builds during the night, during 12 o'clock during the night or 1 o'clock or some odd timings where you are not available to trigger the builds. So that's where you can easily put up and you can configure this stuff. So this will help you to trigger irrespective that if you are logged into the environment to the Jenkins or not, it will trigger automatically. You just have to put a particular pattern, the time pattern over here in this case. Now again, we have a webhook configuration which is there for the Git hub here. It's a post mechanism and one of the most efficient option. Now in this one, you don't even have to wait for 1 minute or 2 minutes over here. It's like something which is immediately within 1 seconds or 2 seconds, the build will be triggered. For example, like if you're running the build, like if you are going for the particular triggering over here, so it's going to immediately give you the required response the moment you feel like okay that we have done a new commits. Immediately the Jenkins build would be triggered. So it's just going to trigger in 1 second or 2 seconds, and it's that much fast over here. So it's an instant trigger which is happening over here the moment we talk about the webhook configurations here. And the last option is the poll SEM, which we were talking about earlier, that it's something which keeps on polling to the version control system and only triggers a build when the new changes are there. Now, the only difference between the webhook and the poll SEM is that the poll SEM unnecessarily keeps on continuing or keeps on sending the request to the version control system, which at us after a certain moment of time, it's going to very exhausted for the version control system to process that kind of request. So that's why the particular poll as the webhook configuration is something which is one of the best and one of the most optimized option and settings which is available there. So again, if you really wanted to configure the build triggers, so these are the different build triggers which is available there. You can have more than one build triggers also configured. If you see like, okay, I wanted to go for the build periodically and I wanted to go for webhook configuration. So if you wanted to do that kind of stuff, so that's also something we can do it over here. So depending on that, we will be able to get the response and our build automation will be performed here. So more than one build triggers, you can definitely do it, and it's a part of the configuration which you can look upon over here in this scenario. The next one is what exactly is the pre and post build actions, like something which we will be able to take care. Now, from the name itself is clear that before the build process, if you really wanted to do some kind of action, some kind of work you want to do, for example, you before the build process, you need some folder structures, some directories to be created. So that's something you can take it as part of the pre-build actions. Like you want to delete some files, you want to remove some folders. So that's something you can do so that according to that you can have the build process done and you can get that part. Now we also have a post build actions which is available. Now as part of the post build actions will be after the build process. Once the build process is successful, you will be having the post build actions. Standard tasks which we do in case of post build action is the email notifications, like having some JUnit test cases reports generations, having some reporting, sending some email notifications, doing some deploys. These are the standard processes which we are looking forward in the post build actions. So the name from the name itself, it's very clear. We don't need to explain much on this one because it's a very basic understanding that anything to be done before the build will be coming up in the pre-build, and anything after the build will be considered as a post build actions over here. So depending and corresponding to that, you will be able to get or you will be able to go ahead with these particular changes over here in this case. So this is the post build actions which is available, and something where we will be able to add more than one step. Like if you wanted to have multiple steps created, so we will be able to have that particular step and modifications done over here in this case, in this scenario. So that's a way that how the post builds or the build or the some certain processes after the particular build process can be done, can be achieved over here. So if you want to feel like you want to run some couple of commands after the build process, if you want to execute that, so for that we can go for the post build actions and we can get that functionality done. We can get that particular setup done over here. Now let's talk about running a Jenkins job here. Now, once you have the configurations done into your Jenkins, like all the build configurations is done, the build, post build, pre build, all the steps has been executed. So now you need to take care of the build trigger because having the configurations is fine, but after that you have to really go ahead and run the builds, because once you run the build, so you will be able to have a build automations and test cases automation performed over here. So that's a basic stuff which we are really trying to look upon over here, and we are trying to achieve all together over here in this one. Now, the moment you run a build, so what will happen that into your build history, you will be able to see all the builds over here. For example, if I see some couple of builds available, like I triggered the build over there, so you will be able to see into your build history into your Jenkins that couple of builds has been executed, is being available there. Now, not only you can see these build history, but you can even see the console output, the logs also over here, so that you can understand that what are the different logs you have got over here in this case. So that's a basic, like a way that how you can find out or you can understand that what are the different logs which is available there. So console output is a link where you need to click on each and every build, and you can have a separate build logs available there. So if you're running 5 logs, 5 builds, 7 builds, 8 builds, so you will see like those builds are actually giving you some build logs, and those build logs, when you're going with that, you can easily go and you can find out the console output for that particular logs over there. So according to that, you will be able to find out that if what is the purpose of these build logs and how you can go ahead and you can process this stuff. So yes, build logs are very important to identify if there is any kind of issues in the build. You will be able to get over here with the help of console output here. So that's the main focus. That's the main point, reason why we are looking forward for the console output over here. We already know by now that Jenkins build is something using which we will be able to handle the build automations, and we are taking care of the test cases automation over here. But during this automation, sometimes we do a lot of, like hard coding there. Like we are trying to do some automation, but we do a lot of hard coding over there in that case. And with that, what it happens is that it's became very difficult for us to manage it. I mean, if we really wanted to do some changes later on, I have to go in the Jenkins job and I have to do the changes. That's a kind of a manual stuff which you have to do. Now, how we can resolve these things, how we can get rid of this, because again, it's a very manual effort and very manual task for me over here in this one. So in order to get rid of this, what we say is that we go for the parameterized build. Now the parameterized build is saying that I will be running the Jenkins builds in such a way that it will be parameterized. So the same Jenkins build with the help of parameters can be triggered in multiple ways. Multiple ways you can run that and you can get the desired output. So that's the main benefit which you're going to get with the parameterized build. Of course, like in a Jenkins, you will not be having multiple Jenkins jobs again and again. So if you feel like, okay, I don't want to do that kind of stuff, I feel like whatever the particular jobs or builds we have got over here, I will not be running it up into a different way, and I will be going with a different approach, and I can have single Jenkins job being prepared or being utilized in multiple ways. So that's the main focus which I wanted to make it up over here. So parameterized build is the way that how you can define some parameters. For example, you wanted to go for a deployment job. Now, for the deployment job, you need some parameters. Like these parameters will be like, okay, what version you want to deploy, which environment you want to deploy. See, these are the standard parameters which you need over here. Now, if you pass on these parameters to your Jenkins job, so according to that, the Jenkins job will function and give you the desired output. So these parameters are very important because it's going to give you the desired output, that how you wanted to do the deployments, how you wanted to do the Jenkins job build over here. So during the builds also, if you want to do some kind of different parameters, you want to have some parameterizations there, it's all possible. So whether you do a build, whether you do a test cases automation, whether you do a deployment automation, in all the cases, parameters is a very static way. Parameterized build is just a feature of Jenkins. Now, what kind of Jenkins job you want to create, that's completely up to you. So we don't have any limitation that only the build automations or the deployment automations can actually be done with this one. So there is like a variety of scenarios in which the parameters can be really utilized here. Now, again, these are the advanced, like these are the advanced concept which comes in when you really wanted to explore the Jenkins to a certain level. Now, after the parameterized build, we also have another functionality which is known as the distributed builds. Now, distributed builds is actually enforcing like how we can go for the particular multiple builds. I mean, like something where we will be able to perform the build automation. Now, usually we run the builds on the Jenkins master, like we have only one server available over here, and we kind of keep on running the builds on the same stuff over here, right? So this is like something where we will be able to get along and see like how this functionality we wanted to do, and how these things can be really achieved over here in this case, to see like how this particular configurations can be done. So as part of the distributed builds, we will be keeping in mind that yes, rather than going for a single server, we can have an inclusion of multiple servers, so that we don't have to depend on one server. Plus, it also helps us to share the load. We don't have to put all the loads on the same machine or the same server itself, right? So master slave architecture is what we are looking forward in a distributed build scale. So this is the distributed builds architecture, like something where we have one Jenkins master and multiple Jenkins slave, and the master would be sending up and orchestrating the builds request on the different build servers and the slaves here, so that in case anything happens, any issue happens over here, we would be able to trigger the build jobs, the builds process on the slave machines, and we can get the desired output. So that's something which we are really looking forward over here. Now, again, when it comes to the Jenkins master and slave over here, so we are talking about a multi cluster nodes where if any kind of failures are there on one server, on one build server or a slave over here, the build request will be processed by the another one here. So that way we can get a very streamlined and a better process over here. Now, when it comes to the particular parameterized build, so we have in Jenkins General tab, there is, if you want to do the configurations, you can just reconfigure the Jenkins job, and there you will be having an option called this project is parameterized. When you go to the this project is parameterized, so there we have an option to select multiple parameters. I mean, like string, boolean, choice, the password, the run. There are a lot of parameters which is available, using which we can perform the automations and we can get along with that here. So these all options are definitely helping us, because using this we will be able to understand that how the parameterized build can be triggered, and we can get a very good flexibility over here in this case. So that's the main thing which we are really looking forward over here. Now when it comes to the parameterized build, now, it's not like all the time we have to use all the parameters. Sometimes we may have to use some parameters, and in some cases we may have to use some other parameters. So that's a basic, stuff which is available there. So depending on that, we can understand that how these things can be implemented, and we can have a complete mechanism of the distributed builds here. So that's the main thing which we wanted to consider. So if you want to have some parameters, now parameters is all about making a Jenkins job generic. So if you do a parameterized builds, you will be able to reuse the same Jenkins in a multiple way. So you don't have to say like, okay, I will be going on some changes in this particular Jenkins job, then only it will be onboarded with a different environment. No, we don't have to do that part here. So the same Jenkins job can actually be deployed in different ways. All you need to do is like you need to just go ahead and utilize that stuff. So that's the main benefit which we are getting up over here in this case, that how these implementations are really going to be utilized and being used over here. So that's the main purpose of using this stuff here. Now again, as far as the distributed architecture is concerned, you can have more than one slave over here, right? So when it comes to the slave over here, so you can see like here we have a master and we have a slave machine over here. So master is the one which by default comes in the moment you install the Jenkins master, so you will be able to have it. And as far as the slave is concerned, is something which we will be able to have. More than one slaves you can have, because on this slaves you will be running your Jenkins job. So rather than have only one single server where all the projects are getting built out, we are trying to have multiple slaves over here, so that we don't have to depend on these individual slaves as such over here. So that's the reason why we are focusing on how we can go around and we can have these different distributed builds coming out over here, right? So if you, even if you want to add like you want to configure into your Jenkins job that if you have some slaves added up, so let's say like I have a slave with a label called slave. So if I wanted to add it up, or if I want to restrict my Jenkins job to be executable only on this slave here, because if you don't restrict this, by default it will start going to the master. So you need to definitely go and restrict that. Yes, this should be executable, or this should be running up onto a slave here. So that's where you will be selecting an option called restrict, where this project can be done. And then you can decide that yes, we wanted to really get along, or we wanted to trigger this Jenkins job onto the particular slave over here. So that's what we are trying to trigger. We are trying to run upon over here. And using this option in the Jenkins job in the general setting, you will be able to have that particular configurations. You can decide that yes, this is a slave which you want to configure, and corresponding to that, the option will be selected. Now, what is the typical difference between the freestyle and the pipeline over here? Now, the freestyle job is something where you will be requiring an admin access to modify or do the changes to the job. Whereas in the pipeline job, there is no dependency on the administrators, and the CI scripts can be stored in the version control in the repository itself. Now, freestyle job is something where you will be, doing the updates directly into the Jenkins. The pipeline job is something which is picking up these jobs automatically, or like from the repository itself. Now, freestyle job is limited in a lot of integrations. A lot of modern integrations are not actually available over there. But as far as the pipeline job is considered, it's like something which is really focusing on and giving us a very a perfect way of doing the implementation. Freestyle job is like something which is directly preserved. So in case you lose the Jenkins, you will lose the information, the Jenkins jobs also. But since in the pipeline, you can still recover it because these pipelines are there in the version control system. So at any moment of time you feel like you want to recover it, you will be able to recover it up over here. So these are like some kind of advantages, like some add-on features which we are going to get over here altogether. And this is a great flexibility because ultimately in the end you will be able to know like how these setups and the modifications and the changes can be really performed over here in this one. So that's a way of doing the implementations and setups here. Now, of course, sending a notifications is very important. If we talk about a production environment, so or we are talking about an actual environment, so sending up a build notifications is very important. Like you need to really need to have a instant feedback that what is the purpose of what is this particular status of this particular build process over here. So in that case, you can go for the email notifications. Now, email notification when it comes, so it's like something using which we can send the email notifications, like you can send the build logs. A lot of stuff can be done with the help of that. Now, of course, if you really wanted to integrate, you have to download the plugin. You need to install the email plugin over here. So if it's not installed into your Jenkins, all you can do is like you can just go around and say like, yes, how we can go it there. So you can go to the plugin manager in the manage Jenkins, and you can go and you can select for the plugin that yes, this is the plugin which we wanted to go and we wanted to have it done over here. So that's the main thing which we wanted to consider so that we will be able to see like how exactly the automations and the setup can be done and can be achieved over here in this case. So that's the main stuff which we are trying to achieve it up all together over here in this case. Now again, you have the option which is available that if you go into post build actions, you will be having an email notification option which you can use and see like how these automations can be done, can be achieved over here in this case. So that's also like something which we will be able to see like how exactly these things can be done and we can get overall on this particular stuff here. Now let's talk about the Jenkins pipeline here. So what exactly is Jenkins pipeline altogether? Now when it comes to the Jenkins pipeline here, so it's something which is very important because it's a modern way of providing the CI/CD automations. I mean, we are still using the typical freestyle job perform the automations on that part, but it's still not sufficient for us to do that kind of changes. So towards that, what we do is like we go to the modern changes. The modern changes is suggesting that we should be going for the a Jenkins pipeline here. Now, how exactly the pipeline is different? Pipeline is huge differences there. Like from the architecture perspective, also it's different there. First of all, just like freestyle pipeline can also handle anything, any kind of pipeline you feel like you want to automate, you can do it. Plus, on top of that, it's not dependent on the Jenkins. I mean, if like today you want to migrate from one Jenkins to another, you will be able to automate it. You will be able to move it easily. Now in the freestyle job, unfortunately, you are putting up all the John configurations in the Jenkins itself, which means like the moment your Jenkins crashes, you will lose all your job configurations. And it's very hard sometimes if in the absence of the backup, if you don't have the backup, it's very hard to reconfigure the jobs again there. So how in that case you will be doing? So again, in that case, what we are saying that yes, we don't want it to get along with these kind of functionality. We want to go for the Jenkins pipeline. So rather than keeping these pipelines in the Jenkins, the configurations, we wanted to keep it into the Git repository itself. So as part of the modern CI/CD approach, we are storing up these pipelines in the Git repositories. That's what we are trying to use. That's the main thing which we wanted to consider over here. So in the DevOps pipeline, Jenkins is a kind of an integration or orchestration tool which is available, which kind of integrate all the different tools as such here. So it's a very important tool because ultimately it gives you a great flexibility that how exactly this tool can be a beneficial tool for you, and you will be able to get the desired output over here. So that's the main thing which we are trying to focus it up over here. And it's very important because ultimately you will be able to understand and consider here that how these configurations are really going to be done here. So yes, the Jenkins pipeline is a modern way of handling the stuff, and it's something which will be able to handle a lot of configurations as such over here. So we will be going forward for the Jenkins pipeline because it gives a great flexibility and kind of a new feature which has been coming up to you. so that we will be able to enforce or we will be able to go for this kind of automation here. So that's the main focus point which has been given by the Jenkins pipeline over here as such in this case. So this is how the pipeline looks like. I mean, something which you need to go right. First, you have to go for the checkout of the source code. Then you need to go for the build process. After that, you need to go for the test cases automation. And later on, you can do a deployment to a lower environment, could be a staging environment also, and ultimately going towards the production environment. Now, it's not only about the continuous integration, but continuous delivery, deployment, everything in line over here. That's the reason why we call it as an CI/CD pipeline, because we really wanted to see or wanted to consider that how the CI/CD automations can be done and how we can get rid of this particular manual efforts over here. So CI/CD pipeline is covering both the build and the deployment automation here for us in this case. And in this diagram, you can see like it's something which is going to work in a sequential manner. If any issue comes up in one stage, you will not be able to proceed further. You will be stopped there itself. And regarding the feedback will be sent out immediately to the developer and the concerned team over here. So let's talk about this Jenkins file here. So Jenkins file is a text file which needs to be there in the Git repository. I mean, it's something which is written in the Groovy DSL language, the specific language, and in which you will be providing up the complete stuff, like what kind of automation you need to do, different stages you have, what different build process you need to have over here. So everything will be modified and will be provided over here in this case. So it's something where you will be able to see like how these changes will be done, and you can take care of these particular flexibility or the benefits over here. So that's the main stuff which you are really trying to look upon over here, and it's something which can give us a great flexibility that how this tool can be utilized and can be performed in a proper manner here. So Jenkins pipeline is definitely a great tool, and it's something which is a part of the automation which you're looking forward, because using this one only you will be able to consider like how exactly the automation can be done, and you can get the desired output over here. So that's something which we are trying to look upon over here in this case, and it's something where we will be able to get the desired output also, like how these automations can really help us on that particular part here. So whatever you feel like you want to automate into your Jenkins, you will be able to code it up into the Jenkins file, and that Jenkins file can actually help us with the automation. Now, what exactly is a scripted pipeline? Now, scripted pipeline is a traditional way of developing the Jenkins pipeline, the older way where we were following a very strict Groovy DLSL language. Now, these rules are so strict that it actually, like something which is very strict, and the developers can actually work it on the large and complex pipelines. But again, if a DevOps engineer is coming or any other person is coming up, it becomes very difficult for them to work it off on these pipelines. But it follows a very strict manner. Like it's something which starts off with a node element and go off with the node block. Like you have to put up all the stages inside that. It's a very formal way. So again, it's something which gives a very strict pattern. You cannot use your own customizations. So you have to unfortunately follow this pattern. So there is a huge learning curve in case of scripted pipeline. If you're not there from the development background, so you may face some difficulty initially to in order to handle or in order to go ahead with this particular mechanism here. So that's a kind of a learning which has been there, a learning curve which is available in order to understand and grab this understanding here. So that's something which is being a point of a focus over here in the scenario, like how this can be really picked up over here. So this is how the scripted pipeline looks like. You have a node mechanism, the node section, the block. Inside that, you have a couple of stages like checkout, build, the test execution. So according to that, the different stages will be executed. So you just have to play around these with these different stages, add up some couple of stages, and corresponding to that, you will be able to get the desired output. So it's something which will be able to handle like how these things are going on, like how these will eventually help you to get along with this functionality. So scripted pipeline is definitely something which is giving you a great flexibility to understand like how these different stages can be handled up. And but yes, you have to follow this whole strict pattern over here of defining the pipeline. Declarative pipeline is a new version of Jenkins pipeline, like something which can give you more flexibility. It's just there for the flexibility that the person who is not too much familiar with the Java or the Groovy syntax is there, they can be able to control a lot of aspects over here. It's very simple and straightforward mechanism which is available. So it's not following very strict Groovy DSL languages, patterns or the particular syntaxes over here. So it's very open-minded and like it's something which is very open to the developers or the DevOps engineers, and they can just play around here. So they don't have to put that much understanding, or the learning curve is not that much huge over here in this case. So that's the flexibility which we get here. Now, as far as the declarative pipeline is concerned, so you will be having a pipeline syntax, and there you will be providing like what is the agent you want to look upon here. And then the same things, like you have the stages, behind that you have stage and step there. So again, just kind of integrated syntax, like some parameters are there. So pipeline, agent, stages, stage, steps, these are the keywords which you cannot change. These are the ones which is defining that what you're trying to do over here. And ultimately, whether you're using a kind of scripted or declarative, ultimately in both the cases you have the same style of pipeline only. So there is no difference as such there from the pipeline perspective. It's the same thing there. So the steps which you're trying to provide over here, it's going to be the same in both the scenarios. So there is no difference as such in that particular case here. So that's the main similarity which we have got over here in this particular mechanism, right? So again, the difference is pretty much same. The declarative very flexible, scripted follows a very strict groovy pattern. Scripted is a traditional way, whereas the declarative is a new approach of developing the pipelines. Declarative pipelines can be restarted at any stage. Any stage, if you feel like you want to restart, you can get it. That's a kind of option which is being given over here. But scripted is not something that you can even restart a specific stage. It's like something that you have to completely run the complete pipeline and get it along there. So that kind of approach is being there in the scripted mechanism, and we should not be following that kind of stuff there. So if you have the flexibility and the time, so you should be going for the declarative pipeline as compared to the scripted, because it's definitely give you a lot of add-on features on top of the typical additional stuff over here. So that's the main point. That's the main thing we should be having over here in this case, right? So again, this is a kind of a pipeline, example pipeline which is available there. So we have the pipeline, agent configuration, the stages, and within the stages you will be having multiple stage, and then we have the steps available over here. So that's a kind of a skeleton which we follow for a complete CI/CD pipeline over here with the help of the declarative pipeline over here. But in both the cases, the final product or the final end result is almost the same only. So there is no difference as such there. So that's pretty much what we have covered so far. So let's quickly summarize on this. So far from the beginning, we started off this session from the build automation. So we talked about like what exactly benefit we are getting with the build automations. What is the build process here? Like how we can convert the application source code into the final build artifacts. What is the build artifacts here? How it's different from the particular executables or the DLL files or the exe files there. Then we moved on towards the integration, the actual integration of Git and GitHub, how the Jenkins can actually interact with Git and GitHub or any other version control system, just to check out the source code so that the Jenkins can actually start the build process. So we saw that particular couple of options around that. Also, we talked about like how we can do the configurations of the Maven kind of tools with the Jenkins, how we can have the build triggers, build automations, how we can actually do it with the Jenkins. We saw in the global tool configurations that how the Maven can be triggered, can be executed over there. Also, we saw the Jenkins build process, that how the build process in Jenkins can be triggered. What is the Jenkins build process here? How the automation really happens, and we put a very good understanding about the build triggers. I mean, we talked about the poll SCM, the webhook configurations, build periodically. There are a lot of concepts which we have talked about in this case to understand that how exactly these builds can be triggered automatically rather than just going there and just spinning up and clicking on the build now option. Also, we talked about the Jenkins pipeline concept. We talked about what is the pipeline, what is the difference between the Freestyle and the Jenkins pipeline over here. So that's completely understood over here. And we also try to get along with the same functionality, that what is the high level of changes which we have got between the scripted and the declarative pipelines here. And of course, we talked about the email notifications, what is the scope of sending a notifications, how we can send the instant feedback to the developers. For that particular aspect, we talked about the email notifications also there. So these are some of the concepts or some of the core concepts which we have talked about in lesson, which is purely inclined towards that what are the high level of benefits which we get with the Jenkins, and how the variety of build automations and the build mechanisms can be really performed over here in this one. So that's it for this particular lesson, guys. See you in next lesson. Thanks everyone.